Welcome everyone to this live Force Friday session. As I've said in the past, we are ramping up in the month of January here to prepare for Force February. And Force February is going to be weekly contests with prizes. And in order to do that, we're gonna run that or umbrella that underneath the concept of character design. So every week there will be a new character design. So we're trying to give you guys some advice that could potentially help you with the contest itself. Today we're going to talk about clothing, right? I think it may be the first time we've ever talked about clothes on Force Friday. And as we all know, it's a pretty important subject. Ironically, we learn how to draw from the nude model because there's lots of skills to learn there, right? There's the mechanics and the function and all of it, the force of the human body, shape, design, and form, and so on. And then clothing is affected by that, right? So we want to be aware of that, right? With clothing, we're going to be talking about the body relative to clothes. You know, gravity plays a part in that. The force of the body plays a part in that, and so on. So yeah, very, very exciting information to share with you today. So let's say hello to everyone. Let's see, who have we got here? Any new people? Oh, wait a minute, it's Swendley Ratunji. How are you guys doing? What a surprise. How's it going, Swendley?
Yeah, great. I was just thinking, I think it's the first time we do clothing, so it's going to be very interesting indeed. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it'd be interesting, new conversation. It's something that I think is long overdue. So we'll probably do a lot more clothing stuff throughout this year. And hopefully it will finalize with a book by the end of this year that Ratunji and I are working on currently. So here's some, you'll get some. Say what?
You reveal the secret.
No, I know, I'm not good at secrets. How's it going, Ratunji?
Going good. Very excited for the clothing. Yeah, finally able to test out, that I was like experimenting with the clothing, and now we can finally get it out, through this live stream. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah. All right, so let's get to it. We have a lot of stuff to share with you guys today. So let's head back to Photoshop here. So before we get started, I'm going to hand this over to Mattesi in a minute. A couple of reminders before we get going. Number one, if you're new, please hit the subscribe button and also the bell. The bell helps you get notifications from when we post. So that's number one. This way you don't have to worry about it or put it on your calendar. And then number two, like I said, to reiterate, the reason we're doing this is preparatory, or we're preparing for February, right, where we will be doing character design. Okay, so let's get to it. Let's start sharing with you these three tips that we have for you to hopefully simplify the concept of drawing clothes. So with that, Ratunji, I'm going to hand it over to you. I have to give you power here. Let's do that. Participants, there we go. Give it to both your. There we go. And you are all in control.
Right. All right, you guys can finally see.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's get started, guys. So today we kind of like divided this the beginners, like how to draw clothes, in basically three parts. Okay, and I'm going to be presenting the first one, which is from the force standpoint. So we kind of like end up with something like the applied force, the force form, which Mike's going to handle, and then finally we're gonna throw it into shape and design and some creativity, on top of that, with some stylization and everything, So let's start, drawing clothes with the force way. Okay, so how to do it. So as you can see what I wrote there, applied force in clothing, So first of all, let's talk about the applied force itself, what it is and how does it affect, the clothing itself. So let's start, So most of you, if you're like a member or, if you have like any contact with us, it's basically the force like acting upon a directional force, right? Directional force is just energy, right? Going from a point A to point B, like this. And then applied force is the force which acts upon it, okay? Which gives it its strength, So basically, if the strength of the curve is like this, you can say, well, there's a great amount of applied force to it. If the curve is like more subtle, you can say, well, there's a very light applied force to it. So basically, this applied force is very, very important, in terms of its strength, because it really decides the strength of this directional force, that you are giving. So that is the applied force. Okay. It's coming out of the body. Okay. So we always have these like convex curves. Okay. Out of the body. Now, how does it apply? How does it apply to clothing? Because so see, for example, I'm just drawing. Let's say we have an S template. Okay, which means the body is like pushing this way and pushing this way. So you can see like there are two directional forces. This one's first, that's one second, and it's like pushing the other way. Okay, like to the opposite way here and here, causing this like creating this S template. Okay. Now what's happening is the clothing is just going to be following that. Okay. So clothing, see, and what this applied force did, it creates like two tension points. Okay. So one is kind of here, one is kind of here. You can also say that the tension is created on the apexes of the curve, right? The apex is that point, where literally it's the most amount of applied force on that direction force, right? So for example, if I have a direction force to this, you can see the peak of this curve, okay? Or you can say, whoa, look, boom, the applied force is directly hitting to it, okay? So that's basically the apex. Now, here in this relationship of this S, we see that there are like two tension points created, one's here, one's here. Now, because clothing, right, it's basically a skin, it's like an artificial skin that we are able to, wear, here I'll be explaining it through the terms of loose clothing, okay, loose or probably the medium clothing, because it's very, very easy with the loose and medium clothing to really see those relationship. Okay, they really they're flowy, they're loose, so it's very easy to see those changes going around there. So for these 2 points, the clothing would be let's take another color here. Yeah, so the clothing would be following like this lead here. Okay, all the creases that we see, it's just by stretch between like those 2 points. Now what's happening is obviously because it's a body, the clothing is like covering it, so the clothing would be going around the body and everything. But these are the 2 tension points, that's been like creating like this force, that we see in the clothing. Definitely. So that's how the applied force, works. Now there's another example. There's like many examples. Obviously, this is just from the torso. So for let's say, for example, there's this knee, that we're looking at, and see like how the applied force is like hitting. Okay. Now see what I just did. I just took a out to out template, right? Out, right? The front to front template, for the leg, which is like hitting into the feet, right? Into the heel. Now what's happening? See the applied force? It's right there, right? It's in the knee, it's in the heel, right there. Let's try the blue color here. So it's right there, right? It's right there. So these are the places like where the applied force is hitting. Now what the clothing would be doing, okay? If I take black here, see what the clothing would be doing. All the creases are gonna be radiating away from it, like this. So basically, again, we have 2 tension points. So wherever, remember, the applied force, where the force is like hitting, it becomes a tension point, okay? And from that tension point, the creases or the folds will radiate away, okay? It's gonna like create that kind of radiating pattern, like this. Now, the other end of this radiating pattern could do anything. So for example, if this like a literal leg, then the clothing would be bunching up like this, okay, like that. And then here, it might like create these kind of like creases. obviously because, you know, it would be a pant, okay, doing something like this and this, okay? So the other end, as you can see, the other end is following the volume and the direction, which Mike is going to cover with the seams and, you know, form. But here, what's happening, like these two tension points is like creating this stretch apart, you know, within those pent. So that's one, okay, that's the applied force and like how it works across like these examples. Now what? Yeah, we talked about tension point and the radiating force as well, okay. So these are the three parts that you need to remember in order to first of all figure out like what the clothing follows. Okay, it follows literal the body functions, and that's why to draw the templates first, okay, and to understand those templates first is very, very important before drawing any clothing, right? That's why I just want to study like nude figures because yeah, these are, yeah, I mean, you're not going to be focusing too much on the clothing and stuff. You're literally going to be seeing like all those templates, study them first, and then it comes to like all the clothing, okay? Now we can jump to some demos, okay? I can give you some examples. I took these references. I mean, this is my friend, right? His name is Devashish, and a great model, you know? So I was just saying, yeah, well, can you do some modeling for me? And it was like, yeah, okay. And yeah, as you can see, like really, really cool references here. But either way, so did you see like what the body's doing?
I'd love to make a suggestion. I'd
Yeah,
say
sure.
make that picture big and draw on top of the photo first and show us actually in the photograph like what you're going to draw, because it's such a
Oh,
great
okay.
picture, and literally just trace on top of it. Yeah, and it's easier for them to see and show us what you just described.
Mhm. All right, sure. Thanks. All right, let's take a red color. Let's see
Yeah.
what's happening. Now see what's happening here. He's bending, you know. So he's stretching apart here, right? He's squashing up here. That would be, you know, that would be the squash. So basically it's a C template, okay? Stretching from one side and squashing from the other. So that's happening, okay? Now we have this. I'm basically going for the body template first and then clothing afterwards, you know? So I'll be taking another color and, you know, we'll see what happens. And see, that's the rhythm, you know, that's the rhythm of the arm. So we have this, you know, this is going into the arm like this, okay? So that's the main one, okay? We'll watch the pants because obviously the pants are not the full one. These are like the shorts, okay? So basically look at the shirt first. Now see, that's the body template. I figured out the body template. Now let's try to trace the clothing over top of it, okay? Let's see what's happening if you see in the clothing. Here's all the stretching points, you know, and they're like just you know, being tensed across like these 2 points. So here, if you see the applied force is hitting there, applied force is hitting there, right there, you know, all the applied force, you know, right there, right there. You know, arm is a really, really good example here, like the really good part here to study, you know, what I was explaining before. It's because of the applied force and everything, you know. So see like these 2 tension points that the clothing is like stretched across. And then all of these creases are like bunched up, you know, because of the compression of both of these joints, you know, the upper arm and the lower arm. So basically we have this, okay. Let's say we have an open arm, okay. So creases are going to be not too bunched up, you know, something like this. But if it's this comes closer, okay. So for example, this comes closer, this would like really bunched off like more and more, you know, like this. Okay, so something like that would happen. So all the applied force right there, you know, and then see all the stretching that's happening across in here, like that. So very, very easy, you know, concept. First of all, figure out the body templates and then try to see like where the tension points are. And this would be very, very useful once you actually start to do it on your own, okay? But yeah, just first of all, just figure it all out. All right, so this is it. Now, obviously, it's you might thinking, oh, you know, because this is the applied force. Wait a second. Yeah, so you might be thinking, well, applied force are also hitting into the shoulder right there, you know, because because all of this force is coming into the shoulder right there. So this not applied force, so all the creases should be going in there. But yeah, obviously, you know, it really depends upon the type of clothing sometimes, you know. So for here example, the shirt, it's just sticked on the skin, okay? So there will be a bunch of like creases which is going across the clothing like this. And the more and more you actually study the clothing, the more you'll be able to figure out like, okay, how the particular cloth is going to be reacting to the body, okay? So yeah, these because of this like tension point, across the arm, this clothing is actually forming the volume of it, it's respecting the volume of it rather than like going with the force, okay? All right, so that's first, okay? We have another example here. Let's try to bring this in. And here you'll really see like, again, the same example. So let's try this. All right, so see now what's happening, okay? Because this is the tension point, look at how his elbow is like stretching out, which is again creating this applied force, into the elbow. Oops. Creating this applied force into the elbow like this, okay? And see again, that becomes one tension point. And here's the another tension point, right on his like waist side. So this is creating this stretch across, okay? And see like how the clothing is literally following it, okay, from both the sides. So that's one, okay, that's another example. This is even better, from the one before, because that's only affecting the arm most of, most of the time. Here it's affecting the body and that arm, at the same time. So he's creating the stretch, okay, across his elbow and, with his waist, basically. Now see what's happening. This is going ahead. The other side, basically these clothing right here, these creases right there, these are like bunching up, okay? So they're just like respecting the volume more, going like this. Now here, see like it's radiating out, it's all radiating out, from that bunching up. Let's say we have another example maybe. Yeah, this is also an arm, this is also like the applied force, hitting into this like elbow and like going into the forearm, like there. And see again, all the creases bunching up right there, okay? So what's the, what's coming up from this? Basically tension points, very, very important, right? All the applied force hitting into the joints, and then bunching up as the joints are like compressing, or like coming towards each other. So it could be maybe a knee, right there, maybe a knee, the upper, the thighs and the lower legs. It could happen, obviously, you've just seen an example in the elbow or in the arm, okay, like that. All right, we have time left or not?
No, you're at about time in order for each one of us to get 20 minutes.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, that's my part. Okay, just remember all of these points. Again, I'm just gonna bring it in. Just remember the applied force, right? Hitting into the certain joints, and then they would create a tension points, and then they would stretch across like clothing, in them. And again, remember the radiating force. Okay. All right, let's jump in. Let's hand it over to Mike now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mattesi.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I think just to recap on Mattesi's awesome description coming up and the drawing on top of the photos, which were great, is just be aware if you have clothes and you've got something that's like a bag like this and it's straight up and down and you start to push applied force on it, you're going to end up with this, right? And that of course is going to set up wrinkle on one side and applied force on the other. And as he mentioned with the radiating, wrinkles will radiate out from that. So this is a very simple setup, right? And is super powerful, because if you're drawing out of your head, you have to understand some basic rules of function, because now you have nothing to look at. And this is a really basic rule. And most of the time you're going to see it in the hip, the knee, and the elbow, right? Those are like three main areas. So just keep track of those three moments. So I'm going to talk today about form, right? Form and clothes, I think, are like a match made in heaven. Most students, especially if they've been drawing from the nude model for some time, their main concern is dealing with clothes. Like, oh my God, clothes are going to make things really difficult. And clothes could. I think clothing could become confusing. It's easy to have somebody who's over wrinkled, their clothing is over wrinkled, and to get caught up in thinking I have to copy everything that I see in this photograph. What you want to bring over is what is most functional to the drawing when it comes to force, form, and shape, right? Like you need to edit, right? You need to edit the reference to the point where it's doing what you need it to do clearly, right? For instance, one thing, a trap that might happen is you have a structure that's like this, but maybe the clothing is doing this. Maybe there's a wrinkle on top of the clothes that's doing that. I don't want that, right? That doesn't work. That doesn't work because it's going in the opposite direction of the structure of the form, right? So no good. You could pull off something called an S curve, which means maybe part of the curve is like this, but part of the curve goes like this, right? So now I have like this half-half situation, right? That's okay. That's better than having nothing that's going in the right direction, you see. So you want to at least get that half, and that happens pretty often as well, right? So you want to be aware of that. So, and one of the other things, I have quite a few people I'm mentoring right now that are drawing on location. And on location, man, clothing is great actually, right? Because just by drawing somebody's clothes, you can get form very quickly out of it, right? So I might start with some simple shapes of somebody standing that looks something like this, right? So really, really fast and easy, but it's like, hey, the bottom of their shirt, right? The seam over here in the, of the sleeve. I'm going to put some wrinkles in there and some radiating wrinkles coming out of the elbow, right? Like really fast stuff. Here's the end of the shirt, right? Putting on some clothes actually helps really fast. And usually when I draw on location, I go for forced shapes and then I throw on the clothes, and the clothes help me build up the form. So forced shape gives me force and shape, and clothing gives me form, right? So to bucket this into 3 main areas, I would say you want to be aware of seams. Now, this is good to know not only for the sake of form, but I think it's also good to be aware of how clothes are made, right? Be aware of the seams in the clothing, right? Where are they? How was this garment, stitched together? Where are those seams? Because those seams help you create construction, right, and form. Number 2 would be like the edges of the clothing. For instance, the edge of your jeans, or even the top of your pants or skirt or dress, right? Or the bottom of your shirt, right? And then last but not least, I'm going to add in here a little side thing called V shapes, because this ends up in clothing as well. And I think it's really important to understand how to use that in order to create structure, right? So seems pretty straightforward, right? If we have, I'm going to just block out like a very simple shape here. But if we have a shirt, right? Most of the time, the shirts are pretty simple when it comes to the construction, right? Typically, you'll have a seam here and here, like in the arms, right? So it separates the sleeve from the arm itself. And of course, as an edge, I would call this an edge, we're cutting a hole out of the neck, right? You can't put that shirt on unless there's a hole for the neck. It's not going to work, right? So we take that for granted, right? Because clothes fit, right? We've had other human beings making the clothes for us as human beings. And of course, we're going to be able, they're wearable, right? We can wear them. But it's really important to be aware of the edges here. So I have the edge at the bottom of the shirt. Here, let's call edges red. I have the edge over here at the neckline. And I also have the edge at the bottom of the shirt, right? So we've got 4 edges here that will help me create form, right? Some shirts will have, here, if we go to seams, let's say seams are blue, right? So I have a seam here. Some shirts will have a seam here as well, right? Like you'll have a seam sometimes down the center or the side because they're cutting the shirt in halves and then basically sandwiching it together, and you're the sandwich, right? So it's, you're in the middle of the clothing, right? So another thing, to be aware of, sometimes that seam will even run up the sides over here. In fact, in some clothing, that's part of the aesthetic, right, is to really show that particular seam. I'm looking at my sweater that I'm wearing right now. Yeah, and there's a seam in the top of the shoulder, and then a seam obviously at the arm, right, where the shoulder connects. So we've got this one and this one, okay? So pretty prolific, actually, when it comes to structure, because, once I have somebody standing, let's say here's a forced torso, right, like this. So it's curving this way. I now, if I'm, especially even on location, if I'm drawing someone, I want to get that seam, right? Because let's say, again, their arm is like this. It's like the sketch I did before, right? Their arm's like this. I want that seam. Oh, and I can grab the edge of the shirt. Notice the tube that helps create, right? I typically even darken in over there just because it gives you this little shadow, right? In the clothing, you see how clearly the arm pops out. I even like, typically my sort of style habit is to put a little drop shadow over there so it really looks like the arm's popping out of this dark hole, right? You know, I can have the bottom of the shirt, right, is pretty important. It's like, how do I want to, here, actually, it's red. How do I want to present that? It looks like the body's going like this right now and down. So the bottom of the shirt should look like this, right? It could be tucked into the belt buckle. Like, you know, that's an aesthetic that some people carry. If that's so, I might go down and then go up and in, right? So that's that S curve that I was talking about before, right? Because the down helps the perspective down and the up is pushing this up, kind of reverses the perspective a little bit to get behind the belt buckle. But at least I have the first half, right, showing me this, right? Let's see, let's go full screen there. So there's seams and edges, right? Let's just sketch out a couple more, right? When you deal with pants, right, you've got this edge, you have this edge, and you have this edge, right? Let's go to black here. You know, seams, you've got the crotch, right? You also have this, so here's, let's say, a pant leg. Here's another pant leg. You've also got the seam down the middle of the side, right? So the center gets shown off with anatomy because the center is the kneecap, right? But you have the edge over there, which is center of the side with that seam. And on the inside leg, you also have a seam. So legs are like a sandwich, right? They're just made like the shirt is, right? You've got one side, you know, one piece on either side that gets sewn together. And then again, you have the center for the knee, right? So I could say if the knee is here, you know, that's the center. If I see the seam and it's creeping up into the shape of the leg, I know that I'm turning the perspective on that, right? And one of the best edges, of course, is the top of the pants. And that usually gets accentuated with a belt, right? Belt's really important. That's like a clear marker for you to describe the form at the top of the pelvis. So you could have a lot of, you know, form changing in direction here, right? Like we could have a torso that looks like this, and this top of the torso, here's the hole for the neck, right? And then have the pelvis go the other way, right? Like this, you see? So I might have a shirt that's going like this, and I might have a belt that's going like this, right? And that gives me a very clear change in direction between the pelvis and the torso. You see what I'm saying? So, man, the belt is huge, right? Really big deal to be aware of that. Now, talking about clothes, this is something we didn't even discuss, the three of us, but you know, like 2D animation and such, character design, the clothing would be used to help present structure, right? So nowadays, most of it's 3D, so you can go a little bit more crazy with detail and all. You'll realize 2D animated films, like the clothing is not detailed, right? But on the 3D side, it is, right? Because once it's texture mapped, it's texture mapped, right? But in general, you would have clothing that might have some kind of marker or something in the middle, right? I mean, even superheroes, right? Usually the emblem's in the center. That makes it a lot easier. It's harder to put it on the third, right? Like if you've had a character that was dressed with a shirt that had a stripe on the third, more challenging. A lot easier to have a character who's got it in the middle. Granted, middle is middle. I think the third's more interesting personally, but you know, I might accentuate this and say this is like the shape of it. Maybe I put like a line over here on a third that lines me up with the arm. So this might be some kind of shape that's on the front of this this shirt, right? Okay, let's see, how am I doing on time here? Okay, I've still got time. So so be aware, my point to this is be aware that when you guys design characters next month, you can use the clothing design, meaning the stuff on the clothes, to help you accentuate centeredness or thirds, to help make the drawing actually easier for you to do because of construction, right? That'll help you construction, right? Okay, any questions so far? It doesn't look like it. Let's say, That's what Mike's talking about. Yeah, you don't want to copy everything, as Mattesi said. You want to know how to edit, right? Because some wrinkles will work and some won't. So that's part of being an artist. So V shapes, let's talk about V shapes. So the reason V shapes are important is because they actually can help present direction in space. Now, I usually bring this up in mentorship with the torso. So I'll start there, right? So here's a V shape. I mean a C torso, and when you get to like the rib cage, for instance, you have this V shape that's right here, and you also have another V shape in the pelvis, right? Like here. This is the V shape I'm talking about that I'm toning in. Now, I could create that V by doing two straight lines like this for the rib cage and just making sure the angle is right, right? That'll help me with the perspective. But better is to slightly curve. You see, if I curve slightly, that bends the form in the direction I want it to go. Why is this important with clothes? Well, first of all, clothing might have a V shape cut into it, like a V-shaped collar, right? And I would say down in the pelvic area, you really want to make sure that you have the V of the lower abs, right? To wrap your belt around and understand where somebody's crotch is and where the wrinkling might be, for instance, on their pants, right? As an example, right? So you want to keep this clear. So you want to know what direction to point that V. Let's go to the neck, right? So on the neck, if I want a V-shaped neck, instead of just doing straight line angle, it helps for me to actually curve it, right? So if I do this to this, that actually sits and wraps the roundness of the rib cage a little bit better. Now I can't keep going like that. If I just do this, it kind of flattens out against the edge of the top of the rib cage. So I will have to curve, right? I have to do this because I have to get around, right? I have to get around the neck like so, right? So I do have to do that. It kind of creates a little bit of that S curve again, right? Because I'm coming off the back and then I'm going to curve down the chest, right? So right there is a change, right? We have a half-half moment again, as you can see. But the V is pointing the way I want it to, which is that I've got two curves, curve 1 and 2. They're both pushing, they're bent in the direction I want them to go, right? So very important. So you want to be aware of this V element and curve it in the direction you want the form to actually point, that the body is pointing in, right? And not have it go against it. Here, just to make my point, let's do the opposite and just look at how wrong it looks, right? So if I do this and I reverse it and I did this, you see how weird that looks, right? All of a sudden it feels like the V is leaning towards camera, yet the torso is leaning to the right, you see? So pretty strange, okay? So you want to make sure, like I said, that the curves actually point in the direction of the form, okay? Now I brought a little treat in here today, a little extra something. I had a mentorship meeting this morning with one of my students. His name is Khalid. And let's put these together. And he's at the very beginning of character design, right? Ironically, so he's kind of timed out with the Force Fridays right now and what we'll be doing next month. So we have this character over here. And these were my notes in the meeting that we did, in our one-on-one. And you can see it was funny because as I was doing it, I was thinking, we have this thing on clothing today, and I wanted you to see all the notes that we went over and how much they, how relevant they are to what we're talking about today, right? So notice seams, right? Seams wrapping. I was talking about tension points. This kind of goes off of what Mattesi was teaching, right? That there's an applied force pushing in that knee. Some of it might get to the other knee, so it might actually drag across, or it's all pulling down off that one knee. Here, I want to get a little bit of roundness of form, and I'm pulling off that hip. The piece that I shared with you today is the form element, right? If you look at his original design, you'll notice that he has this curve right here. That's not bad because, as you can see, the body is like leaning back. I probably would have even pushed that curve a little bit more into the bottom of the chest now looking at it, right? Because we want to keep talking about how we're moving away in space up to the shoulders, right? So that's okay, that very top curve, right? But this guy, this shape, I don't know. I don't know if that's so great. It's kind of high up, and I still need to talk about the form below. So I started switching this, and don't actually think this is a good idea now that I think about it. If we take number 2 and we did a curve on the top going upward to talk about the torso going away, and if we put the opposite curve on the bottom to talk about the pelvis going this way, what do we end up with? We end up with a bad shape, right? We all know the force shape rules. So that is a symmetrical shape, so no good. So you don't want to really do it within the shape of one piece of fabric, right? I just showed him, look, if we flip it, right? If we take that design, and Swanley will talk more about shape. So, but notice the structure, right? You see the structure here is now, that curve is telling us, okay, we're going down with the pelvis. So I made the break here. Let me zoom in a little. I made the break right in here, right? I said, okay, from here on up, we're going up. From here on down, we're going down. So that gave me a curve up, and this gave me a curve down, right? And this fabric around his waistline, therefore, is very clearly showing us difference in direction, right? Difference in direction of form, right? As you can see with my blue lines here. And then, of course, this one down here is just a continuation of that idea, right? So everything down here is going to go down. Notice the bottom of the outfit, right? How much I angle this or not is fine. You know, it'll make it either boxier, which in a sense kind of stiffens up the texture of the fabric, or I round it out, which will soften it up. But either way, I want to hold on to form. So if the box of the bottom is like this, right, it's up to me if I want to literally box out the clothing like that, or if I'm going to make a very soft radius out of this corner, right, almost like an ellipse, right, and do this, right. Really, it depends on the material, you see. Notice the wrapping on the arms, right? You want to make sure that we get this wrapping to feel like it's always going around. Again, if we have this tube and then you decide to do some wrapping and you do this, right? No good, right? Because the tube wants to go this way and you're going in the opposite direction with those curves, you're going to kill it, right? All of a sudden, you're going to create a lot of flatness in that space instead of actually wrapping around with the form itself. So the note here from me to you, talking about form, is that you want to make sure that your clothing wraps around the perspective of the form of the body as best as possible. You want to make sure you check seams, right? Know how clothes are built, because that will actually help you create form, right? Look at the neck, look at the sleeves, right? Look at the belt, look at the shirt, look at the bottom of jeans and skirts and dresses and so on, right? Those ellipses, those shapes will help you create roundness in space. And last but not least is the V, right? I didn't do it on this one, but you can see it has a V shape here too, with this almost like kerchief-like thing. So how would I change this? I would slightly push this way, right? Ever so slightly push the curve that way, and then push this way as well. And you can see, that feels like I'm looking at it from this certain perspective of the camera towards the character. And it helps clarify that that's pushing to screen right a little bit more, you see? All right, any questions before I head out? Computer actually polishing more. Also, I know how you can get the brush icon to appear as a triangle. All right, it's all like tech stuff. The reasons you guys discuss. For next session, could you guys, well, not next session. So Panaboy was saying about tight thing clothes are the easiest, right? Because they're attached to the clothing. So you basically could say tight, let's say medium and loose clothes, and then plus you have force to gravity. Force is a body. Let's call this FB, force body, and gravity, let's call force gravity. So FB and FG, right? And you got these three types of clothing. In tight clothing, you're basically with force body, right? And then in the middle, you kind of have both. And then finally over here, loose, you're going to deal with a lot of gravity, right? Force gravity. You can kind of look at the system like this. So someone was asking about, the Panaboy was asking about this. I mean, most of it's going to be, you need to know the forces of the body. And then you might have what's called like some spiral or O-shaped wrinkles that are really tight to the figure. You know, so again, if you had a tube, you might have a lot of wrinkling that looks like this, right? That's like really tight to the figure. So not as much like tension point stuff and stuff hanging because of gravity, right? All right, guys, with that, I'm going to close up. Hope you guys enjoyed that part of the segment. Remember that clothing is here to help you if you know how to use it. It can really describe form and direction in space. Remember those V's, remember the seams, remember the edges of the clothes, right? And Swanley's going to cover shape with you guys. So all yours, Swanley.
Yeah, awesome, Mike. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think you still have to give me some power.
Oh, yeah, I do. Shoot.
Mitunjay took all the power.
That's right, he did. That greedy Matunjay, power hungry.
See, someone's asking about finding the rhythms. Just, I would say, look at the previous Force Fridays. I think we did a list, at least like 3 sessions on the bodies templates. So if you just go back to the recordings, and you will surely find the answers. I think one of the videos is literally named that, so it'll be pretty easy to find.
Yeah, most definitely. Good question, Grant Sheep, but we have a ton of videos on that, so definitely check them out.
Let's see. It's still telling me that
screen
sharing is disabled.
Yeah, it should work.
Yeah.
I missed the second button.
All right, so yeah, force shape, one of my favorite subjects, and as it applies to clothing. So I was thinking about shape, and of course, the biggest shape of any object is its silhouette. And silhouette is it also makes the clothing recognizable. If you look at the silhouettes of these pieces of clothing right here, you can see what it is. You recognize it because even without any details, so the silhouettes, again, it's like characteristic, like a shirt has a particular silhouette, like pants, jeans, like female dresses have a particular silhouette. So it's very recognizable, the shape. And of course, you can then break down that silhouette into smaller shapes. Since we're building up towards character design, one thing to keep in mind is that the silhouette of the clothing affects the silhouette of the character. Like when I think about like characteristic clothing, the Victorian era comes into mind. Like you see here at the screen right, very characteristic, especially like the female dresses, like those skirts that are like really bulky, and ironically, like the shape of the skirt is a force shape, like you have a straight here, and this would be the curved side, and it gives the skirt like a sense of movement, and of course you probably have seen us talk about the shapes that you want to avoid when dealing with the figure, in this case with clothing, so you want to avoid let me draw those here. You want to avoid symmetrical shapes, and why is that? It's simply because these shapes, they are very static, they're just there. As soon as we add a bit of asymmetry to that shape, let's say we add a straight to curve like we're seeing here, now all of a sudden the shape feels like it's going somewhere because it has applied force to it, like Matunjay was talking about earlier. So the shape feels like it's going somewhere or it's doing something. So it feels automatically more dynamic and alive than something that's just standing there dead. So that's why I like the shape right here. Very nice and fluid. You can see it here as well. So just by looking at the silhouettes, you can instantly tell which what type of clothing or genre we're dealing with. Like see, this one is medieval. This is like Western cowboy, and with cowboy, of course, the hats are also very characteristic. But I think even if we remove the hat, you know that modern type pants don't really look like this. You can see the shape of the boots as well. Again, so silhouettes, very characteristic, can help you define like a certain time period, and it also affects the overall silhouette of your character. You can have a skinny character with very bulky clothing, which makes them appear much bigger than they really are. So things to think about when you're dealing with the shape of the clothing. So shapes, like we saw, we want to make the shapes forceful. You want asymmetry, you want nice straight to curve designs. So to give you guys some examples here, what you wouldn't want with this sleeve, for example, what you wouldn't want is for this to be like a perfectly symmetrical pipe like that. Sometimes when you're used to drawing 4 shapes, it's kind of hard to draw the bad shape because your mind automatically starts to push into more forceful shape. But again, this is, even though it's bending, the shape is really static, and doesn't have as much interest because of the symmetry. It's there is no contrast on either side, and as you can all know, contrast creates interest. So you want to create contrast in the shape to make it more interesting and more fluid as well. So as you can see here, I went for a 4 shape, so this would be like the straighter side. And here we have like a curve, so this is hanging. And it's also because of, in this case, like the arm is being lifted up, so you have an applied force here. And because of that, you're getting some folds like radiating. In this case, I just picked one, radiating for that point. So you want to design your clothing. Remember, even when you're drawing from reference, even if the reference appears to be like symmetrical, remember you're the artist, you're in control of the drawing. So it's up to you to, like Mike said earlier, to edit and make things more interesting. You always want your drawing to be more interesting than the reference. Otherwise, why would we bother looking at the drawing if the reference is more interesting? So design the shapes. And that goes for both the big shape of the clothing, but also the smaller shapes. So once you have the big shape of the sleeve, let me go back here. So we have the big shape of the sleeve. Notice that like even the opening, I designed it, to be asymmetrical. I didn't just mirror this curve right here. This would create that non-forceful shape, and this is more static. So you want to not just draw up or design, which means be thoughtful and be intentional with how things look. In this case, the shape of the clothing. And even when you get into the folds, these are also designed. I paid attention to like create a symmetry. So if we start like silhouetting these shapes right here, notice that all these shapes, are asymmetrical, forceful shape. Even here, this one we looked at before. So this is also a force shape. So you go from the silhouettes and start breaking it down into smaller and smaller shapes, and it becomes like a puzzle of 4 shapes, sticking together, which create the illusion of form. So we can see that here as well. So all of this is designed. Notice like the straighter line here. And here I have a concave curve, and here I took the time to design that. So if you zoom in here, and it's like 2 force shapes, stick together, So we have one force shape here, another force shape there. So hopefully you see what, even as for a drawing as simple as this, it looks like easy, but it takes a lot more thoughts to like simplify reality to this level and to design. Like Mike was talking about the belt, like look at the shape of the belts. I could have made this again. Let me grab the other color here. I could have easily made this a symmetrical shape, but I didn't. I continue designing the shape. So notice that we have a curve here. Here I have a straight, and this is like tapering. So this is a force shape. you know, even the knot here, it consists of 2 force shapes. So if we zoom in, it would be like 2 like overlapping triangles. No, so everything is designed. Even here, like notice that this is all force shape. You have 1 force shape here, you have another force shape here. Now, same here, straight to curve. You know, and when it comes to shape, those are your 2 basic line types that you have to work with. You have a straight line and a curved line, and every extreme in between. You know, so here again, with another example, look at a shape that this fold is making, you know, together with the edge of the sleeve. You know, same here. You know, it could have been very easy to go in there and make it symmetrical to the one at the bottom, you know, but I wanted to keep the asymmetry going throughout all the design, you know. So here we have another force shape, you know, this is another force shape, you know, even here, even the shape that is created by the front of the upper body and the sleeve, you know, this right here is another force shape. You know, so I'm thinking of it again as a puzzle of shapes. You know, and just like with when drawing the figure, don't pressure yourself that everything has to be perfect from the beginning. You know, you give it your best shots, then you stop and you assess your drawing. You know, you start checking those shapes and making sure that everything is asymmetrical. You know, and if you discover a symmetry somewhere, you just fix it. Are there any questions so far?
No, mostly technical stuff.
Mm-hmm. All right, I see time goes by very fast. Let's see. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, which we kind of touched upon, but is to work big to small. You know, you want to think about hierarchy. So you start with a big shape of the clothing, and from there you can decide whether you're going to keep it simple like I did here. Like it's very simple, very few folds. It's mostly overlap, you know, which is another important thing when you're dealing with shape. You know, so basically you want to make sure that you show what's in front and what's behind. You know, it kind of like create the letter T. You know, so it should be very clear what's in front and what's behind. What you want to avoid is tangents, you know, which is when, so let's say if we have 2 circles and like they're perfectly touching each other, like this creates a tangent. You know, what you would want is for one circle to be here and for the other one to be behind it, you know, and then you create an overlap. You know, so you have like you have the letter T being created here and you have it being created here. You know, so big shapes, think of the overlaps to help you show form. And then from there, you can decide to keep it simple like this, like you would see in old Disney animation. Or you can decide to start pushing more towards detail. You know, so I could come in here and I could keep building. You know, I could put like maybe a lot more folds in here. You know, so I could easily continue and, you know, thinking about how those forces work, you know, the tension points, you know, like here we would have another tension point. So I could add some folds in here. And same here, you know, this could be a lot more intricate and detailed. Now, so that is up to you. You know, it's up to you and depends on like what kind of style you want to push for, whether it's like more realistic and detailed, you know, you want to keep things simple. You know, and certain points you might not need a lot of detail. You know, I think here at the knee, I would keep it simple, you know, maybe create like a little overlap here, you know, the tension point, and then change the silhouette a little bit to show like the pulling from the knee. But other than that, it's working pretty well. So you don't want to put details everywhere. It's like composition, you want to like pick areas that allow the eye to rest, and then where you want the eye to focus, there you increase the level of detail. Last but not least, what we just touched upon is the subject of style. So here I have 3 different drawings. Now, so this is more real, and we go towards something that's more like animation or some comic books art is also like this. Then you have something like super abstract, like this character. So notice what happens with the clothing, So in all of them, the clothing has a clear shape, but what starts to happen is the amount of folds that is shown become less and less, or you could say you become more efficient with the folds, So here we have very few folds compared to this drawing of Superman here, which is more realistic, and once you get over here, then there are no folds at all. Like notice that the clothing is pure shape, and also force shape, by the way. Like all these shapes are well designed to be asymmetrical, like same here. Like the artist could have easily made this character's pants look like this and maybe like this, and notice how static and stiff the character would be, if you do that, very different feeling. But they didn't do that. Like notice that, you have a big shape here, which is then divided in 2. And actually this also is one big shape, so you can see how the designers or the artists were thinking. They were thinking in terms of big shapes, and then they start dividing it. And since it's abstract, you don't need a lot of detail, just the bare minimum to make it work. All right, so yeah, I see we have 2 minutes left. So hopefully this gave you guys some new insights. I know a lot of you have been asking about clothing for a while. So we hope that these 3 tips help you to get going, and when you're doing a character design next month, you want to think about which kind of style you want to work in, and like how much detail you have to leave out, to achieve that style. You can see here, the more abstract you go, the more you leave out detail and the more you focus on the overall shape and the silhouette of things. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Mike.
That was awesome, Swinley. Yeah, great job.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so hopefully this will help all of you work on your character design, right? One of the notes I made today in the chat, by the way, was take notes. When I think about my time teaching in physical classrooms and standing up and lecturing, I'm kind of aware when I'm looking at the student audience, like who's sitting there with their sketchbook and who's writing down notes and who's not. And man, inadvertently, the students that week in and week out are the ones who are writing down and taking notes and listening are the ones who do better in class, which is why I made that comment. Also, by the way, I got to tell you, I'm really impressed. Great job on the likes today. We got all the way up to 84. We used to do this a couple of years ago. We would give away a prize if we broke like a certain number. So I'm going to make it 100. That looks like a pretty feasible stretch goal, right? We got up to almost 85 today. So let's try to break 100 in the next, few weeks. And then we'll have another giveaway for you guys on top of what we'll be giving away in prizes relative to the character design contest that'll be going on every week. Okay. So get ready, right? We're 2 more weeks away, and then we're going to start working on the character designs themselves. Before I leave, I just want to put a reminder out there. If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. And if you hit the bell, of course, you get notified, right? You won't have to sit and worry about getting it on your calendar or putting that darn alarm on the phone. Otherwise, we will see you next week, right? We've got 2 more sessions before we start hitting you up with character design assignments to try and help you, support you in doing those character designs. Okay, so great work, everyone. And we will see you. We'll see you next Friday. Up to 88. All right, almost breaking 90. So good job, everyone. Take care and bye-bye. Oh, and thank you, Swenling Matunjay. Awesome job today. Yeah. All right. See you guys.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.